Let me start by asking you about this reopening the idea of normalization. This was apparently practically on the table before October 7th and has obviously been, swept away in the interim. What do you make of this being raised now seriously?
Well, it has never been closed, Kристиан. There were several statements before and after October 7th when Saudi officials maintained that reaching a settlement for the Palestinian issue will lead to normalization and mutual recognition with Israel. As you know, that's the whole basis of the Arab Peace Initiative that the Kingdom proposed 21 years ago and Israel has refused to accept. So that door was never closed. What is perhaps necessary now is, instead of having Secretary Blinken lament the deaths of the Palestinians, maybe he should go forward to implementing the United Nations resolution that called for the recognition of a Palestinian state. That is the only way that the conflict will be stopped finally.
How do you get from there to here now, in the midst of this really unprecedented war, the catastrophic events of October 7th and the, thousands and thousands, according to the Palestinians, of casualties inside Gaza? How do you put statehood and an end to occupation back on the table?
Very simple. You can simply announce it. There is a UN resolution back in 1948, 181, I think it is, of the General Assembly that called for the establishment of two states in Palestine, a Palestinian state and an Israeli state. The Israelis, of course, went on and established that state. The Palestinians did not. Now you can simply say, we go back to Resolution 181 and the Palestinian state will come out. It doesn't require magic or Einsteinian logic or genius to figure a way out.
Yes, but, the fact is that that's been on the table for a long, long time and it hasn't happened. And there are endless peace proposals, including the one you just mentioned that Saudi Arabia presented in 2002. And now we have this terrible war. So I guess, given your experience, I just wonder whether you see any political way out, and maybe, as awful as it sounds, this terrible catastrophe might lead to a political resolution. Or is that just a pipe dream still?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. There is a lot of talk being put out by Americans, by Europeans about a two-state solution, but they've been talking the talk without walking the walk. I think what is needed is for them to put their feet down and simply go ahead and work with Saudi Arabia and other countries in the area to establish a Palestinian state and to end the fighting. The first important thing that must be done is to stop the killing. This is something that America and Europe has not yet reached as an immediate necessity. And I think there is more to be blamed on the West in that than anybody else.
You condemn Hamas very viscerally, but you also wrote that, I'm just going to get this right so I don't misquote you. You accused Hamas of sabotaging the peace process, but you also wrote that they put the Palestinian, in a recent interview, awakened the world to the existence of a Palestinian cause. I want you to explain that a little bit because, let's face it, you all also have a lot of power. And there wasn't a huge amount of love for the Palestinian cause when the UAE made their normalization. And who knows, if it hadn't been for this war now, whether Saudi Arabia would have insisted that there be an end to occupation and a Palestinian state, as everybody seems to say now, in return for normalization.
Well, that's why Hamas has to be brought under control, so that it cannot be a spoiler of any peaceful solution to the Palestinian problem. But the way that the situation has been left, with Israel weakening the Palestinian Authority, and actually it was Israel that was financing Hamas, bringing Qatari money and handing it to the Hamas people. Mr. Netanyahu made that a cardinal political practice that he did for many years. This is unacceptable. And we see the results, yani, that it's more conflict and more indecision and more everything going up in the air. But the only way that you can reach a solution is if you go back to the originals of the problem. The problem is the occupation of Palestine by Israel. Israel has to give up Palestine in order for the other issues to be put in place.
When you say give up Palestine, can you just please be clear about what you mean?
Well, it has to withdraw according to resolutions 242, 338 of the United Nations Security Council and the Arab Peace Initiative and the roadmap of the quartet. All the solutions are there, defining how Israel can leave Palestine to become a state. It's not something miraculous that needs to be done.
So you were intelligence chief for a long time, and you've been, around for a long, long time dealing with this issue and many others in the region. When you see, you said, Hamas needs to be brought under control. That's what Israel says that it's trying to do and doing in Gaza. They say that they've dismantled Hamas control, at least in parts or all of northern Gaza. Do you think this is going to be what does it?
I don't think Israel can do it. It has to be done by the Palestinian people. They're not going to allow the Israelis to do their stuff for them. There has to be, as I mentioned, and there has to be a recognition of a state of Palestine and the stop of the killing, have a ceasefire in Gaza. And then you can talk about how the procedures can be taken from there. And Hamas has to declare its alignment with the Palestinian Authority. It has to give up its previous positions of not accepting a peace solution with Israel. So these are things that can be worked out, but once the ceasefire is put in place, then we can work together with the United States and the United Nations and figure out how we can go forward.
So I talked about the Houthis a moment ago, but do you see any real evidence, and are you concerned that this whole thing spins out into a wider war? I just listed the number of countries where we've seen military activities just in the last couple of weeks. You've got Iran hitting into Pakistan, into Iraq, into, other places. What do you see, and obviously the Hezbollah, Israel trading fire in the northern border there, do you see it spinning into a wider crisis?
I hope not, but I don't think the Iranians wish for a wider crisis. I don't think they want to be bombed, for example, by Israel or by the United States. And that's why they use their militias, whether it is Hezbollah in Lebanon or the Houthis in Yemen or some of the militias in Iraq to do their bidding. We just saw the day before yesterday, and I think yesterday, Iran launching missiles and drones into Iraq and into Pakistan. That is totally unacceptable. But it is something that these are the tools that Iran uses to further its aims. I don't think it wants confrontation with the United States, at least not as far as going into direct war with the United States.